name is Denny Sargent. I'm the author of Werewolf Magick and Werewolf Magick, among other books. I've written about 20 occult books. I've been deeply involved in the occult for about 40-something years. Clean Sweep is one. Down Birthies is another. These are just a few. Dancing with Spirits, about Shinto. I lived in Japan for 4 years. The Horus Lodge, essentially manual of all the rituals and everything. I was one of the founders of the Horus Lodge. Naga Magic, the Guardian Angel in You. I did Knowledge and Conversation. So I have pretty much done many of the occult things one could do, beginning at the age of 14 when I was initiated as a witch, became a Thelemite, became a ceremonial magician, was in 2 different OTOs. All I want to say is I have a little bit of cred. I've been around for a long time. Now, people have been talking trash about my Werewolf Magick books, and I just have finally decided it's a good time to talk about it a little bit, because I don't think the people who have been saying some negative things about it really understand what I'm doing. I'd like also to add that I have a master's degree in ancient history. I did a master's thesis on the sun gods of Mesopotamia and Egypt, and I have taught university for over 30 years. The last 20 years, I taught graduate school. I was training teachers how to teach. I was teaching linguistics, pedagogy, methodology. The only reason I'm bringing all this up is that I am not a flake, and I have been working very, very hard in the esoteric world for a long time. And I just think some of the things that I've written, especially Werewolf Magick and Werewolf Magick, deserve a second look for those who simply thought it was something that somebody put together in their spare time for fun. This is a serious work for me, and I want to talk about it just a little bit. And I plan to do more videos on this. I'm going to walk people through it to show people that it's not a completely flaky thing. In fact, it's an amazing and extremely ancient magical practice, and I have a dog. I think that's kind of perfect, actually. Faunus! I'm not cutting that out. I think it's too good. Anyway, so here's the story. About 6 years ago, I went through a complete disaster in my life. I had a terrible and crazy divorce. I lost my teaching job because of COVID. I was deeply ill. I had fractured a vertebrae in my back. I can go on, but every single thing kind of was done in my life. I'm older, as should probably be obvious, though you'd be surprised how much younger you might think I am after doing Werewolf Magick. But anyway, so I was at the end of my rope. I'm a tantric also. I'm initiated in the Nat Sampradaya, and I meditate every night. And I was meditating, and really at the end of my rope, and thinking very negative thoughts, and being somewhat suicidal. And I was just sort of done. I was sort of done with everything. And in my meditation, all of a sudden this werewolf kept showing up, and I had a very tight circle around my meditative area. And all of a sudden this wolf showed up. You know, I'm invoking Ganesh, I'm invoking Shiva, I'm invoking Tripura Sundari, and then this wolf showed up. And I just ignored it. I figured it was a figment of my imagination. Well, it kept showing up, and finally at one point during my meditation, I just simply looked at it. It was as clear as could be. When I closed my eyes, it was just sitting there. And I said, "What are you doing here?" And it basically communicated to me non-verbally, "I'm here because you've been calling me. You've been desperately calling me because you are at the end of your rope, and I'm here to help you." So very quickly, just to add something, this is my introduction to animism, okay? I'm a pagan, I'm a witch, I'm a ceremonial magician. I've worked with a number of different gods and goddesses. But this spirit just showing up was a completely new situation for me. And I first, of course, I thought I was delusional. It's always a good thought to have. And I realized that it kept coming back and talking to me, and I finally said, all right, what should I do? What do you want me to do? I'm miserable. I am at the end of my rope. I'll do whatever you think is if whatever my unconscious mind or this spirit or whatever is telling me. It said, I want you to go into the woods. I was at the time living near 70 acres of woods. Go into the woods and unleash your animal self. That is the only way you're going to get through this. And I got a little bit more information on like what was this, and I did it on the full moon. I went out there, full moon being traditional for wolves and werewolves, but also a very strong time. And having been a witch and having been a ceremonial magician, the full moon has always been a potent time, lots of energy. So I went out in the full moon and I ripped off all my clothes and I like just let my animal self out, and it was very, very hard. It was like, ripping something out of me and sort of shredding my sad, silly, crazy human self, and all wrapped up in all this negativity, just ripping it out and just like running around. And I came out of it, I was like, wow, I feel 100% better. And I feel like my whole body's vibrating. So, okay, this spirit or whatever it is, this wolf is giving me some good information. And I've been in the occult long enough to know, like, when the gods or spirits give you something, you should probably go with it if it's helpful. So then I sat down with it in meditation again. I said, okay, that was exciting. Give me some more information. So it told me how to unleash my animal self. And the point of this is that each of us is an animal. We are animals. We are Homo sapiens, but we are also biologically in the phylum of gorillas. We are animals. We are animals, and yet our whole lives in the modern world, we've been told that we are not animals, that God has given us dominion over the earth and the animals, and that animals do not have spirits, they do not have souls. We can abuse them and use them and destroy them as we like, because God gave us dominion over all this, because we have souls, but they do not. Now, every pagan and animistic culture before us accepted that animals are spirits, have souls, are useful and communicative, and have their own importance in the world. But this separation of us and animals is why we are destroying our planet. I mean, animals do not defile and destroy their habitat. And tribal people, and I've been amongst many different tribal people. I've traveled a lot. I lived in Japan for 4 years, and I've traveled a lot, probably hit close to 20 countries. And my main thing is getting into indigenous areas and also ruins and whatnot. So having worked with these people, the idea that animals and us are separate is anathema. And the Native Americans, like Chief Seattle, people call him Seattle, when he said a final text to Americans, to us invaders, he basically said, look, you're afraid of the woods, you put up walls, you don't understand, you fear the animals. We don't fear them at all, because they are our brothers and sisters. They have taught us everything. When we kill something, we do it for food, and we honor the animal. We see them as other people. Now, as I'm dug deep into animism during all this, because everything that I was doing with developing this thing called Werewolf Magick, I thought was nuts, and I really didn't plan to publish it at all. But as I've published it and dealt with hundreds of people who have been interested in this, and who I have led in workshops to let loose their animal self, and to let that feral part of them break through all the programming and conditioning and restrictions that our culture has dumped on us and made us crazy and made us ignore the fact that we are destroying everything. The global warming has been going since the 50s. We knew it was going on. Instead, we ignore all of that because we're being led astray. And so that's some of the philosophy that I figured out as I went. But in terms of what happened to me and how I ended up writing this book and actually teaching it and doing workshops on it, is I realized that I was at the breaking point in my life, and I was a good enough occultist to know that I needed help, and all of a sudden this wolf came. So the next step was, it said to me, okay, now I want you to go up into the woods. Now I live in Seattle. This is my backyard in Seattle. And this is where I do all my Werewolf Magic stuff too, with pack and everything else. And it said, go up into the mountains, and an hour and a half from here, I am in the Cascade Mountains, which is full of bears and mountain lions and everything. It's purely wild. He said, go up there, get into the wildness, and unleash your animal self, and just let go and stop worry. Don't worry that the bears and the cougars and the bobcats and the coyotes are going to kill you. You know, when you enter nature as an animal, nature will open up for you. So I did it. I just threw some stuff in the car, and I had nothing to lose. And like I said, I was losing my mind, and I was kind of done with everything. So I ended up in the woods, and I built a fire, and I did what it told me to do, by sort of subsuming my mind, my crazy, burning hot, full of crap brain, subsuming it down, opening up my primordial brain, which is down here, which Carl Sagan called the dragon mind, and just shutting down my computer so I could just exist as an animal. And that much of the book is me explaining how you can shut your brain down and bring it down into the lower cortex, release that part of you that is genetically is animal, and go nuts. So I did. And at first I was a little afraid, and then once I went into a deep trance state and just started walking around, all of a sudden all my senses opened up. I could see in the dark. I could hear the water that was fairly far away. I could walk quietly through the woods. I scared a deer and I scared a raccoon by just existing and moving in. And I was not being registered as a human, because at that point, honestly, truly, I was not in many ways. All right, this sounds really crazy. I understand. And I can understand when people trash talk it. But I can tell you this, I have a sequence, and I've worked very hard on it, to help people get into this state of consciousness, this wolf-based state of consciousness. And I've done it with groups of people. I've had 100 people flip into a trance state and go into a full feral frenzy and lose their language, and just it works. And so people can read my book and say, oh, this is crazy, this is nuts. But if you haven't actually made the effort to try it, I think it's kind of silly to be trashing something if you don't really understand it. Some of the things that I put into this book that are important are my interaction with real shamans, not shamans who got a certificate from a class, but I hung out with Olchi shamans who came from Siberia, who a friend of mine who was deeply into this, into Siberian shamanism, were brought to the University of Washington in Seattle to present. And I got a chance to interview them, I got a chance to work with them, and I got a chance to ask a lot of questions. And I also ran into and became friends with a bunch of shamans in central Guatemala. Our guide turned out to be a shaman, and I called him and I said, I think you're a shaman. He said, yeah, well, you're into it too. I said, okay. So I ended up going to several rituals of these shamans, and I got to see what they were doing. And in Oaxaca, I also ran into and got to hang out and talk with some shamans. Shamanism is deep, it's hard, it's a rough life. As Nadezhda, the shaman who I talked to from Siberia, said, it's a miserable life. Why Americans think it would be cool to be a shaman, she couldn't understand at all. Because the spirits start coming to them, you see, when they're like 3 or 4. And then once they say to their parents, like she said, she went to her parents and said, oh, the spirits, I can't sleep, the spirits are calling me. And she was like 4. And her parents got very upset and said, oh, you're going to be a shaman. And she ended up getting tutored by the shaman and becoming a shaman herself. So the idea that animal spirits come to you and work with you was new to me. I knew intellectually from talking to these people that this was a thing, but until it happened to me, I had no clue what that was about. And in fact, after the wolf came to me and all this stuff clicked together, I suddenly realized, oh wow, this is what the shamans have been talking about. Oh, a spirit comes to me and starts telling me what to do. Okay, got it. That works. So I started working with this wolf spirit, and just going into a trance state and then receiving data and information. That was my occult side, and I was, every full moon, I still do it. Every full moon, I get out into the full moon. And by the way, today is the full moon, so this is why I'm starting my video reality. Anyway, every full moon I'd go out and do my thing, get more stuff. I'd get more feedback. I'd get more direct communication on what to do, what rituals to do, how to stop doing some things. And I'm going to talk about all these in future videos that are going to be more coherent than this one. But I just want to start by saying werewolf magic is actually something. It is from what I'm finding out from animism, if we go back to the Paleolithic era and then work our way through to the present, until Judeo-Christianity took over, werewolves and shapeshifting and animism has been a central part of every pagan, every heathen, every witchcraft cult that existed from the Paleolithic era. And we can look at the paintings on the wall and we see people who are half wolf or half goat and half persons, and it's just there. The history's there. So the first half of my book is really me being an ancient historian, and going through with citations, every single quote, every single paragraph. I dug deep, and I'm not messing around in terms of historical accuracy. And there have been werewolf cults for thousands of years. All you have to do is go online and type in ancient werewolf cults, and you'll find tons of YouTube or just videos or just websites that tell you this. So yes, it's interesting, but in our world, we're thinking, okay, those were the ancient times, but now we're in a modern world. We're not any different. We're not any different. In fact, we're more miserable than most ancient peoples were, because we're so overloaded with everything, and we're doing so many more things, and we're not actually enjoying nature and enjoying the vitality that Gaia or the Earth Mother brings us. Whereas tribal cultures even today will say, look, everything comes from the mother, everything comes from Gaia, everything comes from the earth, everything comes from Pachamama, whatever you want to call her. This is why I end every ritual I do, and I say, to you, from you, all things, Gaia, because we have divorced ourselves from nature, and people don't realize how toxic and potentially extremely dangerous that is, to the point where we are literally destroying our planet, and everyone knows it, and yet nothing is really happening. This is part of the frustration and anger. And I enter the woods and on a full moon, and I tear off my clothes and I let my animal self out, and my animal self is fully aware that Gaia is pulsing and filling me with energy, and the sky and the lunar power is filling me with energy, and everything. I am part of the wilderness. And the idea of tears come to my eyes, because the idea that I have been disconnected from this on a day-to-day basis is horrible. It's a nightmare. And this is why people are depressed and are at their ropes, at their wits' end, the end of their rope. I mean, everybody's miserable, and everybody's in their head with tape loops and stuff, but we're missing who we are and what we are, and we're bloody animals. We are 98% genetically the same as chimpanzees. Look it up. We are, if I remember right, 87% genetically the same as wolves. We have all of the animal DNA in us. This is science. This is not occultism. Our lower cortex down here is the vestigial brain, of like monkeys and all the animals every animal evolved, especially as mammals evolved. The way the organism grew and changed, the brain back here is sort of the primordial brain from lesser, quote unquote, lesser animals, monkeys, etc. And then as we grew for the maybe 3, 4, 5,000 years ago, I don't remember, as we grew our upper cortex for a number of reasons. But there's a downside to that. Yes, we got language. We got a lot of other things. Linguistic currents and linguistic thoughts. There's a great field called linguistic evolution. And so, yes, it's wonderful. We have a wonderful brain. And yet part of it is that we've disconnected as we've more and more focused on higher cognitive functions. We've disconnected from our animal self. And tribal people get this right away and understand it. And they think we've become deaf and dumb and destructive. And it's obvious. There's nothing I have to say about that. Anyway, the bottom line of what I wrote this, I didn't plan to write it. It was my own notes and my own working, and it was getting me where I wanted to go. But enough people were interested that they pushed me into seeing if someone would publish it, and lo and behold, somebody did. So that was the first book, and trying to tell you my story, trying to tell you the history, and trying to tell you a basic methodology of doing it for yourself and why. This is the secondary book, and this is about people who want to actually form packs and groups and do it together. And this changed everything when I had a pack and suddenly realized that the power of a number of people doing this working is extreme. It's potent. It's like every magical group, whether it's an occult magical group or a witchcraft coven or whatnot. And by the way, just as a side note about witchcraft, what surprised me very much when I was doing my research is that about 50% of all the witches, I went through all the documents. I'm an obsessive compulsive historian, and about 50% of the people who were accused of witchcraft during the witchcraft trials in the Middle Ages, etc., were also accused of being werewolves. And I have citations, and you can see it. Why? Because shapeshifting was a part of witchcraft and has always been a part of magic until fairly recently. So these things are not completely nuts. Anyway, a little bit, the final thing I want to say in terms of my defense of my insanity. Well, first of all, I definitely look better, feel better. I'm a lot healthier. You'd be shocked. I'm definitely older than you think I am, probably, but I'm doing great. I'm doing great as opposed to being an overweight, completely out of control, suicidal person. And I have to say that unleashing my animal self, however you think you should do it, is a key thing. We're heading towards a lot of cultural issues. So I guess the last thing I want to say is, you're welcome to visit my website. I have tons and tons and tons. I write a lot of essays about werewolf magic, rituals about werewolf magic, presentations I've done at different large events on werewolf magic. And what you're looking for is werewolfmagick.com. So it's werewolf and then magic with a K, of course, magick.com. And you can find tons of stuff there. I want to end with the way I end with both my books. We are heading towards an environmental apocalypse. There's no doubt about it. Everybody who has their head in the sand, or born-again Christians who feel that it's the end times and good for them, I don't know what to say except that it has to start with us. This reconnecting with Gaia, so we can somehow pull back from the destruction of everything, of the world we live in, of the earth and the trees and the animals, as we're decimating everything, and our climate change is going to be far more intense than people think it's going to be. I'd like us to survive as a species. It's that simple. And by connecting with your animal self, you connect with Gaia. I have lots to say about that, but I guarantee you the experience of being able to shut your upper cortex down, let your animal self come out, and go into nature and just be open, suddenly Gaia opens for you. Nature opens for you. It has been waiting for you, as are all the animal spirits, the energies and the powers of wildness, weird, and way. That's certainly enough of a video for today. Thank you very much. Think me crazy, think me nuts, but I hope you at least think about what I'm doing. Have a wonderful, wonderful day and a wonderful, wonderful life.